My daughter's teacher accused her of dishonesty regarding her science project. She was left speechless when my Nobel Prize-winning friend joined the Zoom call. Last week, I got an email from my daughter's school that truly shocked me. It was one of those emails that starts with fake politeness, yet you can sense there's trouble beneath the surface. Her 8th grade science teacher, Mrs. Fletcher, accused my daughter, Emily, of turning in a project that was far above her expected academic level and noted significant similarities to online materials. In simpler terms, she was suggesting my child committed plagiarism. Emily is 12. She's always been inquisitive and determined. And yes, a bit nerdy, just like her father. I've spent many late nights assisting her in exploring science. Not by giving her the answers, but by guiding her on how to discover them herself. I hadn't realized she had submitted her project yet, but from what I observed while she was working on it, it involved using CRISPR gene editing simulations to develop theoretical models aimed at curing certain genetic disorders. That might seem overwhelming for a middle schooler, and I understand that, but she didn't reinvent the double helix. She just thought creatively, which seemed to unsettle Mrs. Fletcher. I asked Emily if she had copied anything. She was devastated. She broke down in tears, insisting that everything was her own work. I believed her, not only because I'm her father, but because I've seen her dedication. She is thorough, even obsessive. She would rather start over 10 times than submit something she didn't fully grasp. I tried to explain this to Mrs. Fletcher in an email, but her reply was infuriating. She claimed she recognized the signs of AI-generated work and was convinced that such a level of scientific understanding wasn't typical for a student her age. She even had the nerve to attach a few links, stating they resembled Emily's ideas, even though the only similarity was the term genome. The school then arranged a Zoom call with the principal, Mrs. Fletcher, Emily, and me to discuss the matter further and decide on next steps. The phrase "decide on next steps" sounded ominous, as if they were already planning to fail her or mark her record negatively. I wasn't going to let that happen. That's when I recalled someone from my past. In college, I shared a room with a guy named Dr. Alarikson. Back then, he was just a quiet, socially awkward biology major who spent more time in labs than socializing. Fast forward 20 years, and he's now a Nobel Prize-winning molecular biologist specializing in genetic editing and disease prevention. We've stayed in touch mainly through social media and occasional emails. He's always been approachable, never too busy to answer questions or have a quick video call. So I reached out to him. I explained the situation, and without hesitation, he agreed to join the Zoom call as an observer. When I asked why, he simply replied, "Because I was that kid once, too." The call was set for Thursday afternoon. As soon as it began, Mrs. Fletcher's tone made my blood boil. She launched into a lecture about academic integrity, intellectual dishonesty, and how Emily's project didn't align with the quality of her previous work. She even used terms like statistical improbability and suspicion of unauthorized assistance. It was humiliating, and Emily sat there, trying to hold back tears, while the principal nodded gravely, as if this were some criminal trial. I waited for her to finish, and then calmly mentioned that I had someone with me who could speak to the nature of Emily's work. That's when Dr. Zaman turned on his camera. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Mrs. Fletcher blinked. The principal leaned in, squinting at her screen, and Emily smiled for the first time since the meeting started. Dr. Zaman introduced himself courteously. He didn't boast about his title or list his achievements. He simply stated that he had reviewed Emily's project, notes, process, and simulations, and was deeply impressed by her logic, creativity, and clarity of thought. He stressed that the methods Emily employed were well within reach for a curious and motivated student, especially one with access to publicly available simulation tools and academic resources. He even praised her for referencing a gene editing concept he had contributed to a decade ago, saying, "I recognize my own analogy in her explanation. It's an old one I used in a guest lecture once." If anything, it shows she's reading well beyond her grade level, not copying mindlessly. Mrs. Fletcher was at a loss for words. She stammered something about needing to be cautious and upholding academic standards. But Dr. Zaman cut through the nonsense gently yet firmly. He stated that the true aim of education was to inspire, not discourage, and that punishing excellence because it makes others uncomfortable is how innovation fades in classrooms. Emily, he noted, had done something remarkable. She had used openly available tools to investigate real-world science and had even posed new questions along the way. That's not cheating. That's learning. To her credit, the principal began to backtrack. She mentioned that there might have been a misunderstanding and that they would further review the case. Mrs. Fletcher, while still defensive, didn't say much after that. The meeting concluded with vague promises to reassess Emily's grade and project, but the damage had been done. While Emily was clear of plagiarism, her trust in her teacher and the school system had been shaken. Later that evening, Emily came into my room with her notebook. She wasn't angry. She was contemplative, quiet in that way she gets when she's deep in thought. She shared that she had an idea for a new project, something that couldn't be misinterpreted, something even the most stubborn teacher couldn't overlook. That's when things took an unexpected turn, because what she began working on next caught the attention of more than just her school. After that Zoom call, things were quiet for a couple of days. Too quiet. Emily hardly mentioned the situation, although her teacher hadn't followed up directly. We received a vague email from the school stating that after further consideration, her project would be accepted without penalty, without any apology, of course, and without acknowledgement of the humiliation she endured. But Emily wasn't fixating on it. She was already focused on something new. I noticed she had taken over the dining room table, covering it with piles of notes, sketches, reference books, and her laptop. She wasn't working on the initial CRISPR project anymore. This time, it was something even bigger, which she called Project Aegis. When I inquired about it, she simply said, "It's a way to make her listen." At first, I wasn't sure what she meant, but when I sat down with her and began reading what she was developing, my jaw dropped. Project Aegis was more than just a science project. It was an extensive, multi-layered proposal outlining a theoretical framework for an early warning detection system for emerging viruses using open-source biological surveillance data, machine learning algorithms, and CRISPR-based diagnostic tools. Emily was essentially designing a system that could, in theory, alert scientists to new viral outbreaks weeks before current systems could, especially in underfunded areas. She had citations, data models, and even an example simulation using real-world outbreak case data. And once again, she accomplished all of this on her own. She was watching university lectures online, emailing biology forums with questions, and staying up until 2 a.m. modeling hypothetical genome sequences. At one point, I had to insist she take a break to eat. She looked up from her screen and said, "I just want to prove I can do this without anyone's help, that this belongs to me." The final proposal ended up being 42 pages long, complete with diagrams, references, and a detailed analysis of potential real-world applications. She submitted it to her school science fair, not expecting to win, but simply because she wanted it documented. Her work, her vision, her voice. A week later, I received another call from the school, but this time it wasn't Mrs. Fletcher. It was a regional director of the STEM Advancement Program for Youth. Apparently, one of the volunteer judges at the science fair was a visiting professor from a nearby university, and he had taken a copy of Emily's project back with him. He was so impressed that he shared it with his colleagues, including the head of the university's genetics research department. Within days, Emily was invited to participate in a panel discussion on youth innovation in genetic sciences. Not only that, but the university offered her mentorship under one of their grad students and a summer internship in their junior genomics lab, despite her being only 12. The local news picked up the story, then the regional news, and a national science blog featured a glowing article titled, "The 12-Year-Old Who Outthought the System." I wish I could say Mrs. Fletcher reached out with sincere apology, but she didn't. Instead, the school board received so many emails from parents and faculty demanding answers that the principal publicly acknowledged Emily's accomplishments during a school assembly and quietly removed Mrs. Fletcher from all science fair judging responsibilities going forward. But the best moment came during a special event hosted by the university. Dr. Zaman had flown in for the occasion. He delivered a speech about the importance of nurturing young scientific talent and how brilliance is often overlooked because it doesn't fit within the systems we become too comfortable with. Then he looked at Emily, who was sitting in the front row, and said, "And sometimes brilliance looks like a 12-year-old girl who refused to back down when someone told her she didn't belong." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She stood up, walked on stage, and presented her project to a packed auditorium of scientists, educators, and students. Her voice didn't falter once. When she finished, she received a standing ovation. On the drive home that night, she was quiet again, but this time it felt different. She wasn't upset or angry. She was deep in thought. After a while, she turned to me and asked, "You think I can really do this for real? Like change something?" I smiled and told her what I knew in my bones to be true.